in the years 2001 and 2007? Has Mr. Lacson forgotten that he even sought President Estrada's audience in my grandmother's house in 2007 to seek his support when President Estrada was allowed to visit that particular Christmas? Mr. President, when President Estrada and I were detained at the Veterans Memorial Medical Center, I distinctly remember that Mr. Lacson, together with the older brother of Congressman Ronaldo Zamora, Mr. Manny Zamora, visited President Estrada. This was sometime in 2003. And he asked the support of President Estrada for his planned candidacy for president in the presidential elections of 2004. Mr. President, I know this for a fact because I was there and I witnessed and heard the conversation between President Estrada and Senator Lacson. And has Mr. Lacson forgotten that he went to Tanay, where President Estrada was detained in 2007, one fine Sunday afternoon, to seek his support again in his campaign for election in 2007? And has Mr. Lacson also forgotten that President Estrada, even if he was already incarcerated and burdened by the plunder case against him, willingly, without hesitation, gave his support? Mr. President, if President Joseph Ejercito Estrada is the devious criminal that Mr. Lacson would now portray him to be, why did Mr. Lacson go to great lengths to seek his endorsement not once, not twice, but 3 times in the elections of 2001, 2004, and 2007? Mr. President, Mr. Lacson accuses President Estrada today of so many things, and yet, for more than 8 years, he remained silent. Nanahimik po siya, only to speak today with all the vile and venom that we now hear spewing from his mouth. Mr. President, if President Estrada was a wetting protector, as Mr. Lacson belatedly claims now, why would President Estrada seek to legalize wetting into Bingo Tubol? Mr. President, it is in the very records of this distinguished chamber that then Senator Joseph Estrada's maiden privilege speech when he was elected senator in 1987 was his call to legalize wetting. Is this the act of a man who has benefited from wetting? And if ever President Estrada did not bear down on wetting at that time, he was deeply concerned with those who depended on it for their livelihood. Ano pong trabaho ang ibibigay po sa kanila, sa mga mahihirap, sa mga kubrador, sa mga kabo? Hayaan ba natin silang pumunta sa mas masamang mga gawain? President Estrada was concerned that those who depended on wetting would be deprived of income, and it was necessary to find an alternative for them. The legalization of wetting was deemed as the solution to this problem. Mr. Lacson, according to President Estrada, was asked to go after kidnap for ransom gangs, carnapping, and drug lords. Mr. President, Mr. Lacson also accuses President Estrada or harassing and pressuring Mr. Alfredo Yuchenko of selling his shares in the Philippine Telecommunications Investment Corporation to Metro Pacific as represented by Mr. Manuel V. Pangilinan. The legal counsel of Mr. Manny Pangilinan yesterday denied that pressure was made upon Mr. Yuchenko. Mr. Yuchenko now claims that he was pressured into selling to corroborate Mr. Lacson's claim. Mr. President, how can we trust the word of someone who was the one of the first beneficiaries of GMA when RCBC floated the infamous peace bonds? Our people, Mr. President, will soon pay the price as these bonds mature. How can we take the word of someone like Mr. Yushchenko, who has betrayed the trust of thousands of Pacific Plan holders? Again, Mr. Lacson also accuses President Estrada of condoning rice smuggling in Cebu and of dressed chicken. By Mr. Lacson's admission, it was his men who were being accused of harassing shipments in the customs area. Mr. President, according to President Estrada, he constituted Task Force Aduana to go after all forms of smuggling. President Estrada was, however, disappointed that after 2 months, this task force was unable to deliver and apprehend big-time smugglers. President Estrada then abolished Task Force Aduana and assigned this task to PAOK TF under the helm of Mr. Panfilo Lacson. He asked Mr. Lacson to go after smuggling. Ginoong Pangulo, ito ba ang presidente na makikipagsabwatan sa mga smugglers? Kung ang Pangulong Estrada ay kasabwat ng mga smugglers, bakit kailangan niyang buwagin ang Task Force Aduana at ibigay ang responsibilidad sa PAOK TF sa pamumuno ni Mr. Lacson? If President Estrada was indeed involved in smuggling, why did he not relieve PAOK TF and Mr. Lacson of the authority to act against smuggling and assign this another unit which will be more cooperative? Mr. President, if the then Presidential Anti-Crime Commission and the PAOK TF, which Mr. Lacson headed, were successful, it was not because of Mr. Lacson alone. It is because of the dedicated and committed personnel that served these agencies. It is not because of Mr. Lacson, but because the men and women behind these task forces were because of the collective